This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, George Stephanopoulos.
Good morning. We're coming on the network right now because President Trump is about to hold a press conference in London with the outgoing British Prime Minister Theresa May. You see him walking there with the First Lady behind him, Melania behind him. They're walking from 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister's residence, to the Foreign Office, where family members, staff, and the foreign press are all gathered for that press conference with the president now on the second day of his two-day state visit to the United Kingdom. First day, mostly pomp and ceremony, meeting with the Queen, lavish state banquet last night where the president was toasted by the Queen. This was in his honor last night. The president will reciprocate tonight by hosting a dinner in England before going on to Ireland and then to D-Day, the 75th anniversary of D-Day celebrations in Normandy on Thursday. President stirred up a little controversy on his way into Great Britain by criticizing the mayor of London, inserting himself in that debate over Brexit and the race to replace Theresa May. But so far, since he's been on the ground, the day is going pretty smoothly. There are some protests in London today. Tens of thousands of people in the streets protesting the president and his policies. His policies are not popular in Great Britain. Of course, they're embroiled in their own Brexit debate as well. Most of that put aside yesterday when the president met with the Queen and Prince Charles, and his family was in attendance, as they are in attendance today for this press conference. You see those two flags right there, Union Jack and the flag of the United States of America. Well, we said there's been a special relationship between the United States and Great Britain ever since the days of Winston Churchill in World War II, under some strain under President Trump. And the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, has been under strain of her own, forced out of office. She will be leaving it in 3 days as Prime Minister over this debate over Brexit, which has divided Great Britain so deeply. There we see the First Lady, Melania Trump, entering the Foreign Office room where this press conference will be held. She just attended a garden party made up of children of the staff members of the British government. She is taking her seat, and we expect the president and the prime minister. You see the rest of the president's family there as well. Eric Trump, Ivanka Trump, also there. Jared Kushner, both Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, of course, president's senior advisors as well. Each of the leaders will make an opening statement for a few minutes and then take, we're told, 2 questions from the British press, 2 questions from the American press. And now we see Prime Minister Theresa May, President Trump approaching the podiums. It's likely to be the last major press conference in office for Theresa May. And now we heard from the 2 leaders.
This week, we commemorate the extraordinary courage and sacrifice of those who gave their lives for our liberty on D-Day 75 years ago. As leaders prepare to gather here from across the world, it is fitting that we begin with a celebration of the special relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States, enduring partners who stood side by side on that historic day and every day since. For generations, at the heart of the transatlantic alliance has been our shared democratic values, our common interests, and our commitment to justice. It is that unity of purpose that will preserve the deep-rooted ties between our people and underpin our nation's security and prosperity for the next 75 years and beyond. So I am very pleased to welcome the President of the United States of America on this state visit to the United Kingdom. For the past 2.5 years, the President and I have had the duty and privilege of being the latest guardians of this precious and profound friendship between our countries. As with our predecessors, When we have faced threats to the security of our citizens and our allies, we have stood together and acted together. When Russia used a deadly nerve agent on the streets of our country, alongside the UK's expulsions, the President expelled 60 Russian intelligence officers, the largest contribution towards an unprecedented global response. And in Syria, when innocent men, women and children were victims of a barbaric chemical weapons attack, Britain and America, along with France, carried out targeted strikes against the regime. Since we spoke about NATO during my first visit to the White House, we have maintained our support for this crucial alliance. Thanks in part to your clear message on burden sharing, Donald, we have seen members pledge another $100 billion, increasing their contributions to our shared security. And I'm pleased to announce that NATO will soon be able to call on the UK's Queen Elizabeth-class aircraft carriers and F-35 fighter jets to help tackle threats around the world. Today, we've discussed again the new and evolving challenges to our security, our values, and our way of life. We share the same view about their origin and our objectives in meeting them. But, like Prime Ministers and Presidents before us, and no doubt those that will come after, we can also differ sometimes on how to confront the challenges we face. I've always talked openly with you, Donald, when we have taken a different approach, and you've done the same with me. I've always believed that cooperation and compromise are the basis of strong alliances, and nowhere is this more true than in the special relationship. Today, we've discussed again the importance of our two nations working together to address Iran's destabilizing activity in the region and to ensure Tehran cannot acquire a nuclear weapon. Although we differ on the means of achieving that, as I've said before, the UK continues to stand by the nuclear deal. It is clear that we both want to reach the same goal. It is important that Iran meets its obligations, and we do everything to avoid escalation, which is in no one's interest. Recognising our nations as safer and more prosperous when we work together on the biggest challenges of our time, I also set out the UK's approach to tackling climate change and our continued support for the Paris Agreement. And we also spoke about China, recognising its economic significance and that we cannot ignore action that threatens our shared interests or values. As we've deepened our cooperation on security, including our joint military operations and our unparalleled intelligence sharing, so our economies too are ever more tightly bound together. Every morning, 1 million Americans get up and go to work for British companies in America, and 1 million Britons do the same for American companies here. Our trading relationship is worth over £190 billion a year, and we're the largest investors in each other's economies, with mutual investments valued at as much as $1 trillion. Mr. President, you and I agreed the first time we met that we should aim for an ambitious free trade agreement when the UK leaves the EU. And from our positive discussions today, I know that we both remain committed to this. I'm also sure that our economic relationship will only grow broader and deeper, building on the conversations we had and the ideas we heard from UK and US businesses when we met them earlier today. Tomorrow, we will sit down in Portsmouth with our fellow leaders to reaffirm the enduring importance of the Western Alliance and the shared values that underpin it. And as we look to the future, in the years and in the generations ahead, we will continue to work together to preserve the alliance that is the bedrock of our shared prosperity and security, just as it was on the beaches of Normandy 75 years ago. Mr. President.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister May. Melania and I are honored to return to London as our nations commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day in World War II. We want to thank Her Majesty the Queen, who I had a lovely dinner with last night, a fantastic person, fantastic woman, for so graciously inviting us to this state visit. It was very, very special. Our thanks as well to Prime Minister and Mr. May for the warm welcome they've given the First Lady and me as we remember the heroes who laid down their lives to rescue civilization itself. On June 6, 1944, tens of thousands of young warriors left these shores by the sea and air to begin the invasion of Normandy and the liberation of Europe and the brutal Nazi occupation. It was a liberation like few people have seen before. Among them were more than 130,000 American and British brothers in arms. Through their valor and sacrifice, they secured our homelands and saved freedom for the world. Tomorrow, Prime Minister May and I will attend a commemoration ceremony in Portsmouth, one of the key embarkation points for the invasion. More than 1.5 million American service members were stationed right here in England in advance of the landings that summer. The bonds of friendship forged here and sealed in blood on those hallowed beaches will endure forever. Our special relationship is grounded in common history, values, customs, culture, language, and laws. Our people believe in freedom and independence as a sacred birthright and cherished inheritance worth defending at any cost. As the Prime Minister and I discussed in our meetings today and yesterday, the United States and the United Kingdom share many goals and priorities around the world. I want to thank the people of the United Kingdom for their service and partnership in our campaign to defeat ISIS. As we announced a few months ago, ISIS's territorial caliphate in Syria and Iraq has been completely obliterated, defeated. The United Kingdom is also a key partner in NATO. The Prime Minister and I agree that our NATO allies must increase their defense spending. We've both been working very hard toward that end, and we are very current, and some of them are not. We can't allow that to happen, but I appreciate everything you've done in that regard. We expect a growing number of nations to meet the minimum 2% of GDP requirement. To address today's challenges, all members of the alliance must fulfill their obligations. They have no choice. They must fulfill their obligation. Among the pressing threats facing our nations is the development and spread of nuclear weapons. Perhaps that's our greatest threat. The United States and the United Kingdom are determined to ensure that Iran never develops nuclear weapons and stops supporting and engaging in terrorism. And I believe that will happen. In protecting our nations, we also know that the border security is national security. Today, the Prime Minister and I discussed our thriving economic relationship. Both countries are doing very well, and participated in a roundtable with industry and business leaders. I can say probably the biggest business leaders anywhere in the world. Our nations have more than $1 trillion invested in each other's economics. The United Kingdom is America's largest foreign investor and our largest European export market. That's a lot of importance. As the UK makes preparations to exit the European Union, the United States is committed to a phenomenal trade deal between the U.S. and the UK. There is tremendous potential in that trade deal. I say probably 2 and even 3 times of what we're doing right now. Tremendous potential. 75 years ago this Thursday, courageous Americans and British patriots set out from this island toward history's most important battle. They stormed forward out of ships and airplanes, risking everything to defend our people and to ensure that the United States and Britain would forever remain sovereign and forever remain free. Following this press conference, Prime Minister May, Mr. May, the First Lady, my family and I will visit the legendary Churchill War Rooms beneath the streets of London. I look forward to that. In his famous speech on this day in June 1940, Prime Minister Churchill urged his countrymen to defend our island, whatever the cost may be. As we mark this solemn anniversary of D-Day, we remember that the defense of our nations does not begin on the battlefield, but within the heart of every patriot. Today, let us renew our pledge, engraved at the American Cemetery in Normandy and inscribed by President Dwight Eisenhower in St. Paul's Cathedral, right here in London, that the cause for which they died shall live. Prime Minister May, it's been a true honor. I have greatly enjoyed working with you. You are a tremendous professional and a person that loves your country dearly. Thank you very much. Really an honor. Thank you for the invitation to memorialize our fallen heroes and for your partnership in protecting and advancing the extraordinary alliance between the American and the British people. It's the greatest alliance the world has ever known. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we're going to take 2 questions from the UK media and 2 questions from the American media. I'll start with Beth Rigby.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister President Trump. Beth Rigby from Sky News. For you, President Trump, as you hold talks with the current Prime Minister, the leader of Her Majesty's opposition has been addressing a protest rally against your visit in Trafalgar Square. He says he's disappointed you attacked the London mayor, and he criticised your record on refugees. What do you have to say to him? And is this man someone you could do a trade deal with? And to you, Prime Minister, do you think that Sadiq Khan is a stone-cold loser? Thank you.
You're talking about the Mayor of London. Is that who you said? Yes. Well, I think he's been a not very good mayor, from what I understand. He's done a poor job. Crime is up, a lot of problems. And I don't think he should be criticizing a representative of the United States that can do so much good for the United Kingdom. We talked about it before. He should be positive, not negative. He's a negative force, not a positive force. And if you look at what he said, he hurts the people of this great country. And I think he should actually focus on his job. It'd be a lot better if he did that. He could straighten out some of the problems that he has and probably some of the problems that he's caused. Thank you.
Gonna.
Jerry, yes, he wanted to meet with me, and I told him no. Yes. Well, I don't know Jeremy Corbyn. Never met him. Never spoke to him. He wanted to meet today or tomorrow, and I decided that I would not do that. I think that he is, from where I come from, somewhat of a negative force. I think that people should look to do things correctly as opposed to criticize. I really don't like critics as much as I like and respect people that get things done. So I've decided not to meet. As far as the protests, I have to tell you, because I commented on it yesterday, we left the Prime Minister, the Queen, the royal family. There were thousands of people on the streets cheering. And even coming over today, there were thousands of people cheering. And then I heard that there were protests. I said, where are the protests? I don't see any protests. I did see a small protest today when I came, very small. So a lot of it is fake news, I hate to say. But you saw the people waving the American flag, waving your flag. It was tremendous spirit and love. There was great love. It was an alliance. And I didn't see the protesters until just a little while ago, and it was a very, very small group of people put in for political reasons. So it was fake news. Thank you.
And I would say to both the Mayor of London and to Jeremy Corbyn, the discussions that we have had today are about the future of this most important relationship between the US and the UK. As the President described it, the greatest alliance the world has seen. It is this deep, special relationship and partnership between the United States and the United Kingdom that ensures our safety and security, and the safety and security of others around the world too. And it is this relationship that helps to ensure there are jobs that employ people here in the UK and in the United States, that underpins our prosperity and our future. That is a relationship we should cherish. It is a relationship we should build on. It is a relationship we should be proud of. Mr. President, would you like to?
Very big, and this really is a very big and important alliance. And I think people should act positively toward it because it means so much for both countries. It means so much, and it's been so good. Steve Holland, yes, go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Is that on? There. What is your current view on Brexit, sir? Should Britain leave the European Union if there is no agreement by October 31st? And for the Prime Minister, what will be the ramifications for the UK if there is not a deal?
Well, I don't like to take positions in things that I'm not, really. I understand the issue very well. I really predicted what was going to happen. Some of you remember that prediction. It was a strong prediction made at a certain location on a development we were opening the day before it happened. And I thought it was going to happen because of immigration more than anything else, but probably it happens for a lot of reasons. But I would say, yeah, I would think that it will happen, and it probably should happen. This is a great, great country, and it wants its own identity. It wants to have its own borders. It wants to run its own affairs. This is a very, very special place, and I think it deserves a special place. And I thought maybe for that reason, and for others, but that reason it was going to happen. Yeah, I think it will happen. And I believe the Prime Minister's brought it to a very good point where something will take place in the not-too-distant future. I think she's done a very good job. I believe it would be good for the country, yes.
And from my point of view, I believe it is important for us to deliver Brexit. We gave that choice to the British people. Parliament overwhelmingly gave the choice to the British people. We should now deliver on that choice. I continue to believe that actually it's in the best interests of the UK to leave the European Union in an orderly way with a deal. I think we have a good deal. Sadly, the Labour Party and other MPs have so far stopped us from delivering Brexit and that deal. But we will. But obviously, this is an issue that is going to continue here in the UK. I think the important thing is we deliver Brexit, and once we're out of the European Union, we will be able to do what we've been talking about today and develop not just that free trade agreement, but a broader economic partnership into the future.
If I could just follow up on a related matter. Mr. President, are you prepared to impose limits on intelligence sharing with Britain if they do not put in place some restrictions on Huawei?
No, because we're going to have absolutely an agreement on Huawei and everything else. We have an incredible intelligence relationship, and we will be able to work out any differences. I think we're not going to have it. We did discuss it. I see absolutely no limitations. We've never had limitations. This is a truly great ally and partner, and we'll have no problem with that. Okay?
Francis.
Mr. President, Francis Elliott from The Times. Do you agree with your ambassador that the entire economy needs to be on the table in a future trade talk, a trade deal, including the NHS? And Prime Minister, are you tempted to take the Prime Minister President up at his word and stick around for a bit until the trade deal is done?
I think we're going to have a great trade deal, yes. I think we're going to have a great and very comprehensive trade deal. I can't hear him. What?
It's the National Health Service. He says, should the National Health Service be on the table?
Look, I think everything with a trade deal is on the table. When you're dealing in trade, everything's on the table. So NHS or anything else, or a lot more than that. But everything will be on the table, absolutely. Okay?
But the point about making trade deals is, of course, that both sides negotiate and come to an agreement about what should or should not be in that trade deal for the future. And as regards your second question, Francis, nice try, but no. Look, I'm a woman of my word. Mr. President, would you like to?
John, please.
Mr. President, thank you. Mr. President, domestically, in recent days, Mexico has stepped up apprehensions and deportations of Central American migrants.
That's good.
This could possibly be in response to your threat of tariffs. Has Mexico
Not possibly be.
Has Mexico done enough to avoid tariffs, which will be imposed in some 6 days from now?
No, we haven't started yet.
But the threat is out there.
Yeah, the threat is out there, but we haven't really started yet. No, this will take effect next week.
And what
5%.
And what do you think of Republicans who say that they may take action to block you imposing those tariffs?
Oh, I don't think they will do that. I think if they do, it's foolish. There's nothing more important than borders. I've had tremendous Republican support. I have a 94% approval rating as of this morning in the Republican Party. That's an all-time record. Can you believe that? Isn't that something? I love records. But we have a 94% approval rating in the Republican Party. I want to see security at our border. I'm going to see great trade. I'm going to see a lot of things happening. And that is happening. And as you know, Mexico called. They want to meet. They're going to meet on Wednesday. Secretary Pompeo is going to be at the meeting, along with a few others that are very good at this. And we are going to see if we can do something. But I think it's more likely that the tariffs go on. And we'll probably be talking during the time that the tariffs are on and they're going to be paid. And if they don't step up and give us security for our nation, look, millions of people are flowing through Mexico. That's unacceptable. Millions and millions of people are coming right through Mexico. It's a 2,000-mile journey, and they're coming up to our border. And our Border Patrol, which is incredible, they're apprehending them. But our laws are bad because the Democrats don't want to pass laws that could be passed in 15 minutes, that could be passed quickly. In one day, it could change. But even beyond the laws, Mexico shouldn't allow millions of people to try and enter our country. And they could stop it very quickly. And I think they will. And if they won't, we're going to put tariffs on. And every month, those tariffs go from 5% to 10% to 15% to 20% and then to 25%. And what will happen then is all of those companies that have left our country and gone to Mexico are going to be coming back to us. And that's okay. That's okay. But I think Mexico will step up and do what they should have been done. And I don't want to hear that Mexico is run by the cartels and the drug lords and the coyotes. I don't want to hear about that. A lot of people are saying that. Mexico has something to prove. But I don't want to hear that they're run by the cartels. You understand. You report on it all the time. A lot of people do. That would be a terrible thing. Mexico should step up and stop this onslaught, this invasion into our country, John.
And Prime Minister May, you tried 3 times to get a deal on Brexit. At this point, do you believe that a deal on Brexit is possible, or is this a Gordian knot? President Trump says that you didn't take his advice in terms of negotiation. Should you have? Would that have made a difference? And President Trump, if I could ask a follow-up, you had a conversation with Boris Johnson. Could we ask what you spoke about, and will you meet with Michael Gove today?
Well, first of all, on the first issue, as I said in answer to an earlier question, I personally believe that it is in the best interests of the UK to leave the European Union with a deal. I believe there is a good deal on the table. Obviously, it will be for whoever succeeds me as Prime Minister to take this issue forward. What is paramount, I believe, is delivering on Brexit for the British people. And I seem to remember the President suggested that I sued the European Union, which we didn't do. We went into negotiations and we came out with a good deal.
Yeah, that's not such a... I would have sued, but that's okay. I would have sued and settled, maybe, but you never know. She's probably a better negotiator than I am, Jeremy. But you know what? She has got it, in a sense, John. That deal is teed up. I think that deal is really teed up. I think they have to do something, and perhaps you won't be given the credit that you deserve if they do something, but I think you deserve a lot of credit. I really do. I think you deserve a lot of credit. Okay? Yes, John? So I know Boris. I like him. I've liked him for a long time. I think he'd do a very good job. I know Jeremy. I think he'd do a very good job. I don't know Michael. But would he do a good job, Jeremy? Tell me. Okay? Good. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There you have it right there. President Trump, British Prime Minister Theresa May. President gracious saying she might even be a better negotiator than he, even though, as you listen to the President and the Prime Minister, some clear differences in policy on Brexit, on what to do with Iran going forward, on climate change. I want to bring in Terry Moran. And Terry, that was pretty fascinating press conference right there. You saw the president seem to endorse hardline positions on going out of Brexit even without a deal, on the possibility of trade negotiations that would even include the British National Health Service, and then the British Prime Minister trying to soften the meaning of the president's words.
No question, George. He made big news here with both of those. You know, it used to be that the presidents tried to stay out of the internal politics of other nations. People here in Britain remember when Barack Obama came over and said that they should vote to remain in the European Union. A lot of people didn't like that. And here's President Trump saying you could leave without a deal, which many business leaders here say would result in utter chaos. And then, as you point out, going right to the heart of a big debate here, that in a U.S.-UK trade deal, everything would be on the table, including their cherished National Health Service. That is something that has just struck fear into the hearts of Britons of all backgrounds because they love their National Health Service, warts and all. And the American ambassador said that would happen. President Trump is certainly willing to pursue it. And that points up the vulnerability that Britain has right now. As they leave the European Union, they need the United States and President Trump more than ever. But they may regret that.
Okay, Terry, and I just want to bring in Mary Bruce as well, because Mary, there's some domestic politics that came in as well. You saw the president digging in on that issue of tariffs with Mexico. He says it's more likely than not that those are going to be imposed next week, despite the meeting tomorrow with the Mexicans. And as you've reported this morning, Republicans in Congress quite upset about that.
Yeah, George, Republicans are simply not happy with the president's surprise announcement about this plan to impose tariffs on Mexico, and they are now considering taking action to try and block the president. We heard the president there saying that any attempt to do that would be foolish. Republicans here could potentially block the president in this executive action. It could also have the impact of preventing billions of dollars that were supposed to be going towards the president's wall. But members of the president's own party are not happy. They are concerned that these tariffs could essentially amount to a tax increase on American consumers and businesses. They're also concerned that it could risk the president's other new trade deal. And so Republicans now are trying to figure out what their avenue is. What can they do? But if they do take action in Congress to block this, George, it would be a really decisive blow from the president's own party.
And a lot will depend on how that meeting with the Mexicans goes tomorrow. Mary Bruce, thanks very much. Thanks to Terry Moran in London. Our coverage of the president's trip will continue on our live channel. We're going to go back to the network right now. And for many of you, that's Good Morning America.
And continuing coverage right here on ABC News Live, I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington with our White House reporter Rachel Scott. Thanks for joining us as President Trump wraps up some business with outgoing Prime Minister Theresa May today, having a press conference there. A number of headlines just committed, as you heard George and the team talk about. Rachel, let's start with one of the biggest on trade. The president said that everything should be on the table. Of course, if you haven't been following along at home, Brexit means that Great Britain will leave the European Union. There would need to be a new trade deal reached between the United States and Great Britain. President Trump very excited about that. But as you just heard Terry Moran report there, striking fear in the hearts of a lot of Britons over what exactly is on the table and what could be thrown into question with a deal.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the president say that, right? All options are on the table. And even more so, right? They're going through changes in their own political system. And so even though today we heard the Prime Minister May just right there next to the president, a lot of this will be up in the air depending on who obviously steps in next. And clearly she won't be around in a couple of days. So.
Right, she won't. The president weighing in there on some of her potential successors, taking a poll of the crowds of sorts, sort of breaking traditions. The president dancing around this idea of wading into another country's politics on their soil. He started to say he shouldn't do it, then of course he did it. He is not meeting with opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn, who of course is out leading those protests in the streets. We have team coverage of that, and we'll check in on those very shortly. But the president showering Theresa May with praise, actually being quite gracious, called her a tremendous professional who loves her country dearly, has enjoyed working with her. They have had something of a frosty relationship over the past few years, but Rachel, so much of today and this visit by President Trump is about the symbolism. It's not so much the personalities that we're seeing here, but it's about the special relationship, as it's been called for so many years, between the United States and Great Britain, one of the strongest alliances we have.
Yeah, and you heard the Prime Minister say there as well that they can disagree, right? And it's notable that they do disagree on a lot of things, especially or when it comes to Iran. I mean, I think they both agree that Iran should give up its nuclear weapons, but they have different ideas on how they should get there, right? And so you heard the president today praise this alliance, but there are definitely notable differences there. And again, while he was praising her and before she leaves, and obviously has been very kind to the Queen, it's notable that he has not been kind to some members of the royal family. Again, those comments that he made about Meghan Markle, the Duchess there, calling her nasty, also calling London's mayor a stone-cold loser, and that was all before lunch with the Queen yesterday. So this president, of course, not afraid to speak his mind about how he feels about certain members, elected officials, and the royal family.
Yeah, the name-calling was certainly striking to hear there. But as you say, Rachel, the president and Theresa May making making their differences very, very clear today. Obviously, as she's on her way out the door, it was very polite in their exchange of differences. But Theresa May talking about NATO, talking about the Iran nuclear deal, talking about the Paris climate deal, talking about the importance of doing business with China, all things that President Trump has made very clear he's headed in a different direction on. And we saw those Britons protesting the president himself today in the streets, the values that he stands for. Our Ian Pannell, senior foreign correspondent, has been out there taking a look at balloons like this one in Trafalgar Square. Ian, give us a sense of what these protests are all about. The president says they were actually quite small. What's the
yes, I mean,
real
he
situation?
Yeah, you're right, Devin. I mean, the president suggested that there weren't many protests. He'd seen people out on the streets waving and cheering, waving the American and the British flag. Well, what I saw this morning were probably something around 20 to 30,000 people who gathered in Trafalgar Square. They're here to protest not against America, but against Donald Trump. This is very personal. It's about the things that he's said, the things that he's done, and his policies. Again, some of those issues that came up in the press conference, but obviously expressed more forcefully. What America's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal, to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. Those are issues that touch the hearts of many people, especially in London. Now, opinion polls, we know they're not entirely accurate, but the latest opinion poll indicates that the majority of Londoners, by a percentage of 2 to 1, are against President Trump coming here. What he just had to say about the mayor, Sadiq Khan, again, will go down badly. But the overriding headline for Brits here will be what he said about the prospect of a trade relationship where the NHS is on the table. The crown jewels, you know, sit in that building behind me. But the real crown jewels for most Brits is the National Health Service, where if you're sick, you go into hospital and you don't pay for it. The whole idea that that could be on the table will have a huge impact here in the UK.
It sure will. Ian Pannell, thank you so much for your reporting. And it's not just Britons that could stand to impact from these negotiations, Rachel, but also Americans will benefit from a potential trade deal here. We could see some trade-offs as the president continues to wage a trade war with China and others. Let's bring Mary Bruce into this because Congress has been very closely watching not only the negotiations with the British, but the Chinese, the Mexicans, and the like. Mary, one of the headlines out of this press conference was that the president declared the tariffs with Mexico that he threatened last week will take effect on Friday. That is not sitting well with a lot of Republicans.
No, exactly, Devin. That is not what a lot of Republicans here were hoping that they would hear from the president. Republicans are simply not happy with the president's surprise announcement that he's going to be imposing these tariffs on Mexico. Many members of his own party are concerned that this would essentially amount to a tax increase on many American consumers, American businesses. There's also a concern from Republicans that this could put at risk the president's new trade deal to replace NAFTA. So Republicans now are considering, well, what can they do to try and stop this? And they could potentially hold a vote to block the president in this executive action that would also, of course, potentially put at risk billions of dollars that have been flagged to go to the president's border wall. So this would be a really sort of brutal blow to the president from his own party, a dramatic rebuke from Republicans if they go through with this. And it's very clear that the threat of taking this action is not preventing the president, isn't changing his mind at all, because he does say that these tariffs are going to go into effect regardless. And he says that if Republicans try to stop it, well, that would be foolish on their part.
Yeah, and if you're following the tariff fight at home and struggling to understand what this means for you, Rachel, there's a very real impact if tariffs are applied on Mexican imports. They're our largest trading partners, so billions of dollars of goods come in to the United States every day from that country that we rely on. If there's a tariff, it means it's more expensive for average Americans that are purchasing Mexican-made products.
Yeah, and the administration has pushed back on this, saying that Americans won't, face the brunt of this. But of course, economists say that they will. Of course, Americans, it will hit their wallets pretty hard. And so this is going to be obviously on the minds of Americans here, as well as those China tariffs as well. Americans thinking about that too. And the president talked about it today, but the Mexican delegation will be coming here on tomorrow. Secretary Pompeo is expected to attend that meeting. And so while none of this has started yet, right? I mean, in a way, some say this is maybe a strategic threat. Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney pushed back against that, saying that the president is very serious about this. So we'll see if they get anything done tomorrow.
Yeah, the president is known to issue threats and then walk them them back, one being closing the border entirely. Of course, he wielded that earlier this year. Mary, I want to shift gears and talk about another hot topic that did come up today in this bilateral meeting between the president and Theresa May. Also involves Congress, and that's the issue of the Chinese company Huawei. They're a tech giant. They make cell phones that compete with Apple's iPhone. They're building 5G networks in a lot of Western countries around the world. They want to build one in the UK. The United States, as you know, has banned Huawei products and network building here for security concerns. Congress is also closely watching this one. They don't want the British to also do business with this company.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why, of course, this is a hot topic between those conversations earlier today between the president and the prime minister. Where it goes from here remains to be seen. Look, the president wouldn't exactly give a lot of specifics, but this is something that Congress is clearly keeping a very close eye on, looking at ways that they can potentially get their say in this debate as well. But something that everyone's keeping a close eye on for now, Devin.
Yeah, it certainly is a big deal. Our senior congressional correspondent, Mary Bruce, will be up on Capitol Hill today. Mary, thank you so much. And let's go back to London now, where our foreign correspondent, Julia McFarland, is also tracking the fallout from President Trump's state visit there. And Julia, how are everyday Britons responding to President Trump? We see the protests, but we also saw people waving the American flags, welcoming the American president. Is this visit being celebrated for the alliance, or are people more fixated on the president and his personality?
100%, Devin. That question really depends on where in the country you are. Of course, there's a huge number of people out protesting today despite the rain. Officials and organizers were hoping for around 250,000 people to take the streets. That hasn't really happened. But don't forget, London is a very liberal city. They voted for, the City of London Mayor Sadiq Khan is obviously a very, very big opponent of President Trump. And of course, that spat that emerged yesterday between the two. Sadiq Khan has spoken out against Britain hosting President Trump based on his policies that he disagrees with. But it has to be said, President Trump has received a warm welcome from a lot of people here. There's a lot of people who strongly value the British-American alliance. And of course, a lot of people who voted for the UK to leave the EU. They are very, very keen on maintaining that transatlantic alliance. And that's something that both President Trump and Theresa May spoke about. President Trump saying that what could be possible would be maybe 2 or 3 times what they currently have at the moment. He said, we are committed to a tremendous trade deal. Both leaders commenting on the fact that there is a $1 trillion investment in each other's economies by those two nations. So depending on where you are and what your politics are, people are pretty divided on President Trump. But I mean, as we've been out here the last 2 days, and every time that motorcade has come out, they've been met with cheers, waving of hands. There's a lot of American flags out here. So it really does depend on which crowd you're in, really.
And before we let you go, Julia, I've got to just ask you about the pageantry and the pomp that we've seen the past couple of days. Americans are fascinated by that. It was certainly a spectacle last night with the state visit banquet with the Queen and the formality. We know that the British are sticklers for protocol. The last time the president visited the UK, he sort of stepped in front of the Queen and caused an uproar in the British press. How do you do this time? Has everybody been sticking to their lanes?
Yeah, I mean, the president was clearly on his best behavior, and who does pomp and pageantry better than the British monarchy? It has to be said, the Brits are really starting to get to know President Trump, and they know that he really responds to these formalities, to these special occasions with all the trimmings, because it lends him that sheen to his presidential credentials. You know, after the French state visit, there were those scenes beamed back to the UK, and so I think a lot of British government officials said that is how we need to treat President Trump. We need to pull out all the stops, we need to roll out the red carpet and give him the best state visit that he could possibly hope to achieve. And the president clearly had a wonderful time. He had a lot of warm words to say about his hosts, and he's also looking forward to some of the personal touches that the Brits have in store for him. He's about to go and visit those underground Churchill war rooms, the legendary war rooms where Churchill and Roosevelt spoke by phone. He said, I'm looking forward to that a lot. And of course, some very personal gifts exchanged between the Trumps and the Mays and the royal family.
Julia, thank you so much for your reporting. Julia McFarland for us from in front of Buckingham Palace there in London. I've been to those Churchill war rooms where Churchill was down in the bunkers with his team plotting the response to the Blitz and the like, and they are fascinating. So we'll see the president there. The president is going to wrap up his visit to the United Kingdom later today, Rachel, and then he's headed off to Ireland.
Yeah, and so a lot of this trip, right, commemorating D-Day. So first day, pomp and circumstance. Today, we obviously saw him getting into a little bit of politics here, and he'll commemorate D-Day, and then he'll head off to Ireland where he'll meet with the Prime Minister there.
That's right, and finishing up with the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasions at Normandy, the Allied invasion that started to roll back the Nazis from the European continent, June 6, 1944. So we will see all the world leaders gathered there. Later this week, we'll carry that live here on ABC News Live. We'll also be back later today with all the political headlines today of the day in our briefing room show, 3:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Eastern, including today a special interview with 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Eric Swalwell of California. So tune in for that at 3:30. Great to have our White House reporter Rachel Scott with us. Thank you for joining us for this special coverage of the president in the United Kingdom. I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. Thanks for watching.